This place I used to think was the rectory of St. Laurence, Cowley. And I went in there a long time ago. Look at this wall, isn't it fantastic? The way it narrows to the top. I went in there a long time ago, thinking that St. Laurence, Cowley was the nearest church to where I lived once I moved in. But no, apparently I'm in the parish bordering it to the north, St Andrew's Parish, and I've been going to the church there. So let's go in to St Laurence, Cowley and see what we can see. If I open the gate, there we go. Not much on the notice boards. I think there was a time when this church was dark. Did we say dark for churches? We do say that dark for theatres, but it's the most significant, interesting thing about this church is that it's the smallest church, smallest medieval church in Middlesex, possibly one of the smallest in the country. It's a rather beautiful church. There's some lovely graves here. There's one as recently 2011. I rather like that one. Picture of the Last Supper at the top. And a rather nice, well-kept graveyard. Now, by all accounts, it's opened up again and there are regular services. And there's a lady priest, Reverend Batista, I think she's called, who officiates. But I don't really know. There's nothing on the notice board. Now this should be the west end of the church. You can see the main nave it's built of flint. It's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm very interested in how things are built, especially when they're made of flint. But the graves are all nicely aligned. The grass has been recently cut. There's obviously the main entrance, the porch. I shouldn't think it's open. Could try the door, I suppose. There, just have a little wander around some of the graveyard. I want to see this grave here. I don't think anybody particularly famous is buried here, but you never know. So who's this? Who's this person? Dagnall. Dagnall's quite famous, or was quite famous, and he is mentioned on the internet. So, a nice graveyard. I think what we'll do, as is my wont, is wander around the church in a clockwise direction. My first impression is flint, marvellous. Although the descriptions often say flint rubble, I don't like that description. I just like the words flint. One of mankind's oldest tools, really, building tools. You can see here that there are all sorts of sizes of flint and quite a lot of mortar per square foot of flint. So that's well built, solid. It's the smallest church in Middlesex, possibly in the country. And it's on the corner of a road. It's in an area called Cowley, St Laurence, Cowley. Nobody really refers to Cowley. It's kind of south Uxbridge. It's sort of no one just calls it Cowley. Anyway, I hear you ask, who was St Laurence and why has he got a church? Well, he's a saint. Well, he was a saint, perhaps he still is a saint. And he was rather cruelly put to death, I think, by the Romans in, I think, the 1st century AD. And in those days they invented all sorts of horrible ways to kill their martyrs, and he suffered a rather gruesome death, which I'll leave you to look up. But anyway, perhaps as a result of the way he died, he became the patron saint of cooks and chefs and of comedians. I do like that. Look at that flint, isn't that marvellous? That's real jigsaw flint. That really fits. Every piece seems to fit in the right place. That's one of the best examples of what I call jigsaw flint I've ever seen. Here's a Celtic cross. Never been round here before, so I don't know what to expect. But it's not a very long walk because it's a very small church. Older graves mixed amongst the new, and there's a marvellous tree. Always seems to be, and there's another one. Always seems to be a marvellous tree in churchyards. Look at that grave, that's interesting, isn't it? But it's very peaceful here. The graveyard to me seems to be quite full, yet some of the graves seem to be not that old. 10 years, I think. It's about the youngest I've seen, oldest. Anyway, here's one. Mum and Dad, Margaret Alice White, 2014. Arthur Charles White, 2012. Married 11th of March 1950. Together forever. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. That's very sweet. In our thoughts and hearts, miss you always and forever. I don't know if people come here and put flowers down, but they probably do. It looks like some flowers have been put there. There's an interesting tree. Some flowers over there for a recent-ish grave, I should think. Nancy Margetts. Now I have a neighbour called Mary Margetts. I wonder if she's related. A dear wife, mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. Not to ever be forgotten. I reckon 2017. I reckon that could be the mother of my neighbour Mary Margetts. Now the reason I say that is because I used to have a neighbour called Doris, and I'll talk about her more in the next video. But she was an old lady, 20 years older than me, and she knew Mary Margetts, and all the old ladies seem to know each other, and some of them are still with us but some aren't, and it's rather nice really how they support each other and stay friends. Eunice Embury. Great name, Eunice. I love that. Oh dear. Some of the artefacts have been knocked over. Turf free. (1990s). Loving memory of a very dear husband and dad, wife and mum, Tom Dean, Betty Dean, 1920s to 1992 or 2012. Dearly loved, sadly missed. Some nice benches out. I don't know who looks after the graveyard. I imagine the congregation. There's a view of the church from a few yards away. I think it's 12th or 13th century, the earliest bits of it. So sorry, it's not pre-conquest, but it's still extremely old. And it used to be quite an important church. Something to do with the the Diocese of Westminster, I think. I could have that wrong. But then in 1865, there was a new church built about a mile and a half north of here called St Andrews, Uxbridge, and that St Andrews took a bit of the parish away from this church, which makes sense because St Andrews is a much bigger church, and celebrated its 150 years in 2015. But my neighbour and friend Doris, who used to live next door, was a regular congregationalist of this church for many years, and I just didn't know. She was fairly quiet about her, went her own way, did her own business. This is an older part of the graveyard. I like this one. Emma, beloved wife of Charles Vanner, who died August 17th, 1914. And one thing I find slightly interesting is that some of these graves are kind of, well, they're frames rather than gravestones. Don't know why that is. Quite a few of them, actually. Are they cheaper to do that way? I don't know. But it's rather nice. It's rather good to actually see some of the graves still being tended to and looked after by loving relatives. So that you can see the entire church, really. It can only be, well, I don't know, 40 foot long. I mean, it's maybe 50, 60. Certainly not really any longer than a cricket pitch. It's been a very hot few days. Of course, the day I chose to film, it's been cloudy, but it's still quite warm. Anyway, oh hello, there goes a squirrel. I don't know if you can see him. No, he's hiding behind the gravestones. Lots of benches here. Good place to come and contemplate life, the universe and everything. St Laurence, Cowley. Named after St Laurence. Now, I suppose there's another Laurence who's famous in Uxbridge, T.E. Laurence, who was, you've all heard of him, Lawrence of Arabia, and he was in a film, in the film Lawrence of Arabia, and the part was played by Peter O'Toole. I went to see Peter O'Toole in the theatre in a play called Geoffrey Bernard is Unwell. Geoffrey Bernard was a complete old soak, alcoholic, didn't look after himself. In the end, you know, he got diabetes and all sorts of problems. They had to remove a leg, and he just drank himself to death, really. It was rather sad, age 65. And sadly for him, perhaps he thought he might be remembered as a sort of raconteur and character in the Soho area. But he died, I think it's the 4th of September 1997. And we know what happened 4 days earlier. There was a car crash in the Alma tunnel in Paris, where Princess Diana died. And a day later, who should die but Mother Teresa, a very famous, well, I don't know how you call her, almost a saint, really. So Geoffrey Bernard, who's an old soak, got rather overshadowed by the deaths that happened just before and just after him, and is now more or less completely forgotten. I don't know what the moral of the story is. There isn't one, of course. Ah, here we are. Giovanni di Rosa. There's a a restaurant in Uxbridge called Nona Rosa. I wonder if that's got anything to do with it. Peter Grimes. Yes, marvellous. And look at that. I just can't get over this. There's some enormous flints. Can't get over this. Fantastic. Anyway, I think that's enough me warbling on. So thank you very much for watching. I've enjoyed telling you a bit about St Laurence Cowley. Please subscribe if you can, if you want to, and hope to see you soon. Cheers, bye.